We can get started today and call this Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion meeting of OCPC's committee to order. And I'll read the accessibility statement here for anyone watching or participating. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphone or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833. So this is a notice of non-discrimination rights and protection to beneficiaries with regards to federal title, believe that's sorry, six
Okay.
of non-discrimination protection, that the state of non-discrimination and protection is posted in this meeting room and is available on the Old Colony Planning Council's website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 for more information. Thank you. So we'll get started with a roll call of the committee members.
So Yolanda Spinola,
Here.
Stephen Santasonio,
Here.
and I can't see if there's any other.
There is not.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Chair, just for your information, so we do have staff joining us in the large conference room. Rather than me naming everybody, just we'll say everybody's here, and then we also have staff members who are joining virtually.
Great. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for being in the virtual room or in the actual OCPC room. This is a great time just for us to convene and talk on this topic, and I appreciate you all sharing your time with us. So we can move on to the next item, which is just the August 2024 meeting minutes. So we did meet last year in the summertime, and so I guess we just want to approve those minutes and vote on that piece.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
And then on the vote, Yolanda Spinola.
Here. I'm
And
sorry.
then,
Yes.
And then Stephen Santasonio.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, great. So one piece that we have on our agenda that we talked about last year is just reviewing the strategic, reviewing the strategies to ensure DEI is embraced by OCPC staff and the council. So just gonna go over the strategies and the conversation that has happened since we've met in August.
And I would start from here, but there's several staff members who will be providing, at least if not under this number 5, certainly under 6. And with the establishment of the DEI subcommittee, so what we found through our records of our bylaws is that our bylaws have not officially have this as a subcommittee, which the bylaw committee, when we met yesterday, formally adopted that. They knew that this committee was going to be forming today. So hence there's going to be some discussion, at least in terms of the DEI committee is made up of both council members and staff, and the potential of even bringing in experts from outside of our organization or within the communities to participate. Wanting to know that we as an organization are fully embracing various elements of DEI. So I think if I could just take a hard step, Mr. Chair, I think we did have, I believe Eldon Marrero might have been on this committee. There were other council members. We've had one member who had asked to step back from the duties because her full-time job was taking over. At yesterday's bylaw committee that Becky Coletta, the president of the council, she had said that we're going to be putting a call for council members to be joining, not just only this committee, but others, and wanting to be truly an active and engaged community, a committee made up of both, again, the council members and staff. So us staff are the ones who are really going to be doing the work in preparation, but we will be looking to also council members for their guidance as to what they'd like to see this committee be. Megan, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, so along with what Mary was saying with the bylaws, one of the things that I did after the meeting was make amendments that we had suggested, but one of the biggest items was adding in the right verbiage into the bylaws, not only in the subcommittees, but into the general responsibilities of the council and OCPC. So I did some research and I made some suggestive edits or language that we could put in, and I figured we could review it and then decide if we want to make changes to it, add it, completely do something different. I will make this larger, don't worry. So I figured we could just start with this first verbiage is just really, I'll show you in the bylaws what it looks like, but this is under the listing of all the different responsibilities, the purpose of the organization. So in the bylaws, apologies, I thought I had it. It doesn't go in, does it go in this one? Yes, okay, so as you can see, some of the other items, it's really just a sentence of just saying to review and coordinate, federal, state, and local programs, regional importance, conduct research. So it's really more of kind of action items as to what it is that we do. Whereas in the subcommittee version, it provides a little bit more of a description of what the committee's purpose is. So this first one is really focusing on the organization as a whole in our commitment to DEI. So that's kind of where I just wanted to set that scene. So what I found, again, in this source, I put it in here. One of the recommendations was the organization and the council are committed to incorporating the values of diversity, equity, and inclusions in the governance and operations of Old Colony Planning Council. These values shall be codified in a DEI policy adopted by the council.
Megan, can you take that link and put it into the chat for the others that are
Yes.
online? That would be helpful. So again, just for because this will be action item that would be, or at least discussion wise, both from staff members, but also to the committee members. Really looking to have this be razor focused as what we can do and what we should be doing on our day-to-day, whether it is, us working with the community, whether it's a meeting inside our office, both informal and formal. So we're looking to really try to make sure that this is codified.
Thank you so much, Megan, and others who worked on just reviewing like that purpose piece and thinking about what the right language is to add in there. And I appreciate that research and coming up with the right type of just description.
Does anyone have any added thoughts, comments to changing it? Again, this is just kind of basic. It was a law firm that focuses on nonprofit organizations. A lot of them were somewhat similar, but I thought this one was the easiest to amend and really focus on what it was that we were looking for. So. Jason? Oh, sorry, Yolanda, I didn't mean to.
No, go ahead, Jason, you can ask your.
Thank you. So in reading this, particularly these values shall be codified, but doesn't say what they are. Is it worth at some point sort of saying what those are, like what the specific values are, and how they will sort of be, what's the word I'm looking for? Not only codified, but implemented, I guess, within sort of organizational culture and work.
Jason, I think you raised a good question. Where I'm leaping to is the work that we did under the ROA. We did a lot of that discussion about what the values mean. We didn't use the words diversity, equity, inclusion. But I think Jason raises a good question as to, we say the word value of diversity, equity, inclusion, but having that be further defined. I'm not quite sure if we're going to have that be done today. What I may suggest, just for the sake of a little bit of some time, is that this discussion, so we have a council meeting that's coming up. We are working to try to get some language into the bylaws. The bylaws committee has given May and staff some latitude that we are going to put together some language prior to the council meeting so it can be adopted. But what I would recommend is that if there are other questions regarding, such as what Jason said about values, that we get those determined more sooner than later within the next week and get it back to the committee members, this committee members, and back to the bylaw committee.
Mhm.
That sounds good on my end, and I appreciate Jason asking that question and thinking about like, yeah, how do you actually just elaborate a bit more so that it's clear for all the stakeholders.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any thoughts? Anybody online? Anybody else, Charlie or anybody? Okay.
Only thing I would just say is, so I completely agree with adding in values. I think that when it comes to this bylaw line, we're referencing that there's more to the DEI policy. So I don't think we have to go too much more in depth, not because we don't have it or we don't need to define it, but because it means that now we have to make sure that we create a DEI policy that can be referenced to.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, DEI policy. So then somebody's gonna be like, what is the DEI policy? Thanks, Megan.
Anyone else?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so this is the section that we define what these subcommittees are. So here, again, I found another source that another government county did. And I just kind of amended it. So the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee shall meet as necessary. It is the function of the DEI committee to intentionally work collaboratively across the organization and region, utilizing an equity lens to review and shape policies and practices, identify appropriate resources, implement programs, and issue directives to advocate for and advance equity. And I'll
Megan,
add this link in here too.
thank you.
Any thoughts on this recommendation here that Megan put forward?
And I think, Megan, the only thing that I would say in here that the composition of this committee, like all the other subcommittees, do not include staff. I think in this one particular, we were asking that staff are also, so
Yes.
it's made up of both council members and staff. So it's either here or up above that we should just add.
No, yeah, I agree. It's funny because I originally had it in there and then I was changing the language. And so thank you. I fully agree with you. Clarity.
While Megan's trying to input that, anybody else have thoughts?
Maybe. Do we
We
need,
can work on the language. I'm almost thinking, Megan, we put the up above, sorry, because I know we're working at it. It said the Diversity Inclusion Committee made up of OCPC staff and council members, then put shall meet as necessary. And that language for the council members, that's shall meet as necessary, is consistent with all the other subcommittees. Thanks, Megan.
yeah.
Thanks so much for this research too and drafting the language. Yeah, I think having actual specificity around the topic of the committee makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate us just like thinking about what is the right language.
So I think the next matter is that an action item on both of these, that these move forward with the comment of, with the approval of additional research that we're doing in terms of the value maybe. And then if there aren't any other concerns, then certainly to have it go back through this committee to the bylaw committee.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion, Yolanda.
Thanks, Steve, and I'll second that.
And you could just do a vote, Yolanda. And I guess just because it's gonna be a vote, this is actual council language, in the bylaw. But as the committee takes action, we should then define which staff, like how do we vote and how, ultimately, where does that weigh in? But I would, offer to say at this point, because it shouldn't just only be me, all the work that we do within our communities and the work that we do in outreach should have that lining as in the work that we do. So, can I
Yeah,
recommend?
I think it only makes sense to have probably some ability for staff to make decisions too on this committee, right? I don't know how we could, I think that's probably something to continue to research, like should staff be able, like, is it all staff that are voting, or like there's a certain representatives that are coming on as staff and representing staff as voting members of the committee?
Right, because we could have 21 staff members and 2 council members, and so that's right, Megan, we'll just kind of further define, this will be a working effort that we'll continue to refine. If we need to meet again to refine this, we certainly can, and go through the bylaws committee.
Okay, I'll take a vote on Steve's motion. So unless we have something else that we want to add. So Yolando is a yes. Steve,
Stevens, a yes.
great. So the motion carries.
So that's that initiative.
So the next item, so we're moving on to number 6, which is or do you all want to talk about training that has been available or training that you all are researching?
Mary,
Megan,
would I
was you-
recommend we talk about initiatives first and then see how we can expand off of that with the, what we've already done and what more we can do?
Yeah, we can, let's move on to number 6, just initiatives.
So Nick,
Sure, so,
can you all hear Nick?
you hear me?
Perfect.
Yes, okay. Yeah, this year's sort of a big year for the SEDS committee. This is the year our 5-year plan expires. So we're working on that, and we're using this year as an opportunity to sort of bring the committee into the 21st century, for lack of a better phrase. So, what we're trying to do, we're working on diversifying the committee, and we're updating our bylaws, which haven't been touched in quite some time. So one of the first things that we've done, or that we've looked at, is incorporating OCPC's DEI statement into the bylaws. So I know I've worked with Megan and Elise on that. So the committee this year, on February 5th, will vote to adopt their new guidelines, which includes our DEI statement that I believe has been approved by the committee, with not 100% positive. It might have come before here. So we'll have that. That will be approved at our first meeting, and then as we get closer to the meeting, I've been working on diversifying the committee members. We have a few new members that are expected to join us. One is Andrea Burton, who some of us might know, Rockford resident, but she's also the Southeastern contact over at Eversource. So she'll bring some good experience there. She has some prior experience working at City Hall and Mayor's office too, so it'll be good to have her on board. We've been talking with Selectwoman Deborah Roberts from Stoughton. It's also
Recommendation of Yolanda.
yes. So she may also be joining us in February for our first meeting. So we have some other leads, but we're doing our best to sort of have this committee revamped in 2025, as we're trying to do a whole bunch of new stuff, and it's an ongoing process, but that's where we are. So.
And for the council members, it is one of the things that I'm having all of our committees be looked at. There's a action committee, whether it's a brownfields committee, anything that we have for public outreach, that we take a look at our membership. And to at least take into account who we're asking, are we looking in the right places? Or it should not be a difficult thing to accomplish. So we, again, utilizing the resources of our council members, but also that we are not taking for granted, you know, just because the people have been on, we're going to continue to keep people on. We're going to make sure that there is a cross section of all elements of diversity. That means sight impairment, hearing impairment, as well as folks of color, and as well as within the region, right? We have a very strong tendency, just because we're in Brockton, that we keep going to Brockton. And Brockton is a very diverse community, but we need to, we as an organization, taking efforts across the board, from Plymouth to Plimpton, to communities that we know that they don't have a very strong background in various diversities, but making that effort. And I think that's the piece that that we continue to build resources. And to what Nick had talked about, is that those resources and folks that we reach out to, we will continue to grow, and perhaps maybe that we have that list be accessible to the council members, so that as we build that contact list, you'll be able to see and maybe to add to that list.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that, Mary and Nick. And just thinking about like what are the perspectives. I feel like that's a piece to think about, is like when you're thinking about diversity inclusion, you're thinking about like what are perspectives that are not at the table or missing or could be amplified more, and those perspectives should be valuable as we take on a variety of different work as an institution. And a lot of this work needs a diversity of perspectives for it to be done in the right way, and or for it to be done in a meaningful way. So thanks, Nick, and great job on connecting with folks and building out your future committee.
And Megan, the AAA trainings, I know David had prepared something.
Yeah, so I know that AAA, their staff, they attended at different times, like a 2-day training that was fully embracing DEI. And I think for them, it's somewhat mandatory because they have to do these trainings because of all the outreach and public, you know, working with the older community and everything like that. But it's also one of the things where, as staff, we're being encouraged to attend trainings. And I know Mary and I kind of talked before this, but should it be something that's mandatory and everything? David did send some upcoming trainings, which I had. So there is this one that David had sent along, and I see that Charlie sent one for US.DOT on meaningful public involvement. This one is with Massachusetts Housing and Shelter Alliance. And so it looks like they have multiple different webinars on different topics that, again, is something that we should be encouraging not only staff, but council members to attend. They're 2 hours and they're webinars, so I'm not sure if they're recorded or not. I'm not sure, but that is something also to look at too, because we know we all say that we get stuck in meetings and everything like that, but oftentimes with technology, webinars make it a lot easier to allow us to attend trainings, even if it's not necessarily live. Though I know David mentioned attending the 2-day in person was very powerful, because again, to Yolanda's point, it was hearing different perspectives and having those conversations more than just kind of reading and hearing what's going on.
And Megan, what was great about this was David did share this with the rest of the office to see if there's anybody else to participate, which that again is part of our MO here in our office, that if we see something, we don't just share it just within our own department. It gets shared with across the organization.
Mm-hmm. So that's just one example, obviously, of just what has been shared. But I think, again, a part of going in back to the strategies and initiatives, it should be ensuring that we share these more often. We're looking out for them rather than them just falling in our lap. And then again, talking about whether they should be required or not, and adding that to our personnel policy, etc.
Yep. I don't know if any of the council members have any questions of us.
I don't have any questions. Stephen, do you have any questions on the AAA?
I'm good. Thank you, Yolanda.
So if
Thanks
I could,
for
Mr.
this.
Chair, so as Charlie mentioned, there are trainings through MassDOT, also through APA, both Massachusetts as well as, and most of our staff members are subscribed to it. And if we don't subscribe to it, we'll be able to share information that becomes available. At one point, looking at our budget, is Brenda here? We're looking at budget for trainings to require staff for some DEI training, if not once, potentially twice a year. So we'd like to take advantage certainly of the free because it becomes to budgetary reasons. But the idea is some best practices exist. One of the things that we do not have control over is the council members are appointed by their own community. So we don't control, but they will get a sense once they take a look at our bylaws, but we can control how we run meetings and how we reach out to our community. So that's kind of where we are going forward with at least some of the initiatives.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you for you all leaning into the trainings and thinking about them going into the future too.
Megan, I think the last is the evaluation, the last reflection, opportunities in action.
Yeah, so I know I shared when we had ROA, that was formed before my time, but I believe it was around the pandemic and during all of the unfortunate so that was kind of created and then it kind of fell off, unfortunately, but that's where we started moving this into like a DEI committee. I have it up here, but I did share it in the packet. Staff, it's located in, we have a separate link. So anyone who's new might not know about the ROA SharePoint page, but it is available to everyone and I'll make sure that I share it. Actually, I'll do that now. But this is what was created as a mission statement. So again, this is old, but Ray, I know you were one of the kind of co-chairs of this. And so I know it's very thought out. And so I'm not sure if we want to kind of take it and look at it and see how we can amend it, that it,
Sorry, Megan, what are the things, because I know we have talked about this at the August meeting and shared it for the August meeting. I'm planning on having an all-staff meeting that we specifically just spend time going through this. And with, as you mentioned, their new staff, Jason DeRoche has some terrific background in terms of community engagement. As Charlie mentioned, because because Mass DOT, but also for the work that federal funds come, but it's reaching out in the engagement and certainly too with the comprehensive planning and as was mentioned earlier, AAA. So that all staff meeting has not been scheduled yet, but as
No, it
mentioned,
has.
Oh, it has?
Yes.
Okay.
It's the last one. I think it's the
Thank you.
Wednesday of the last Wednesday in January.
So what I would recommend, Mr. Chair, is let us talk internally. We will invite any members of the DEI committee to come and listen to our conversation. If you have the time, we welcome that. And then report out any updates to what we have. I would probably recommend, since we purposely called it reflection, opportunities, and action. We thought it really brought home internally what was needed, not just saying a word DEI and talking about it and then walking away and come back again, which seems to sometimes feel, because we don't talk about it enough, that's what we do internally. But I really want to elevate the conversations within this organization and again, across the board on everything we do. Anything that we do in this office, anything that we do externally representing OCPC, that, one of the things why we changed the logo was because that old logo was insulting and I think disrespectful. So hence the new logo, but that new logo then represents more of what we do. So that's kind of where we are. Wanted to keep this committee updated. And again, we can reshare this if Megan said it was in your packet already. And if you think you need it, you can always contact Megan and she'll reshare it. So ideally, the all staff meeting at the end of the month will be a good place for us to have some actual discussions and take it next.
Yeah, I'll definitely grant you all that opportunity to talk and think more about it. And yeah, Megan does a great job on making things all really easy to access and find and to reference. So I appreciate you putting it in the packet. And yeah, I'm looking forward to just hearing what comes out of that conversation. And if you all share that hold with me or that calendar invite with myself and Stephen. If we are available, we probably could join but we'll let you know regardless. And we appreciate you all just leaning into these conversations as staff. So I guess if that, is there any other items for initiatives that staff are taking on?
I had talked to Jason about, he had some input about different organizations that put a lot of weight into organizations that do focus on DEI. Jason, I don't know if you want to talk about that.
Sure. Yeah, about my sort of like previous experiences with this work. I mean, it's different maybe because my background outside of Boston City Hall when I first started my career has been largely focused on grassroots organizations. And so that work looks differently with grassroots organizations and sort of like, community development corporations that were born out of the civil rights movement, essentially, than it might for, a quasi-governmental sort of, public-private sort of partnership. But I think there are things that, relate to or are a part of that work, particularly when you're working with community members or working with town governments to make sure that communities work for all of their residents, which is, I think, where OCPC sits, as well as other regional planning agencies. Megan, specifically, what we were talking about was, and this has come up in different conversations around diversifying funding streams and sort of, philanthropic partners. I was doing a lot of work at Alston Brighton CDC during the turn of COVID, when COVID was sort of the pandemic hit, as well as sort of the time of like racial awakening, I suppose, and sort of what was happening then turned the tide in a way around the funding community as well. So I know the Barr Foundation, the Boston Foundation, a lot of smaller community foundations put a lot of focus and emphasis on how organizations that they are funding or potentially funding are advancing equity, diversity, and inclusion goals, but not necessarily just having a mission statement for, but essentially are doing the work of that. And so I think in reading the ROA sort of statement that was made, there's a lot of things there that I think are worth sort of like reamplifying, lifting up, updating, that moves us in a direction to think about how we represent and advance DEI or ROA, whatever we end up sort of calling it or framing it as within our communities. And so, what does that look like in Brockton, Stoughton, and maybe Plymouth, which are probably the more diverse communities in our region? But how are we also advancing and lifting up diversity, equity, inclusion in communities that may not be as racially diverse, but are certainly economically diverse, sort of, in other forms of diversity? And just reflecting on a meeting I had yesterday with Liz Shea, town planner in Abington, around the potential undocumented community that may have a distrust with government now, with sort of this incoming administration. And how are we going to be reaching out to them as part of our housing production plan outreach or whatever outreach we're trying to do? Because the town of Abington represents town government, and so there might be some distrust there. OCPC may be representing another form of quote unquote government, and so how are we building trust with community members to make sure that we're reaching out and engaging underrepresented populations in our work beyond the couple of beyond just surveys, which is something that I think about, and maybe I get stuck in my head sometimes as like an organizer, and doing this work as an organizer. But I think it's important to think about how we broaden the representation, to make sure that the voices, particularly with housing production, make sure the voices of folks that are in the most direct need of housing are able to participate in that conversation, so they're not left out of the process.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I really appreciate your perspective and yeah, thinking about this going forward, because like yeah, DEI is almost like a learning opportunity for us all, and there's a variety of different ways to look at the topic. I think like um yeah, looking at it from like nonprofit lenses or from a community-based organization lens is different than looking at it from a quasi organizational lens. But I think like I really appreciate that we're looking at it and thinking about it. And I think you all as staff, um, I think just leaning in and reading more about some of the different information that's out there. One thing that was done, part of an organization that I was a part of, which is another regional planning agency, MAPC, we had a similar committee, and there was almost a book club that was created among staff, and there wasn't a lot of reading. It was just like a bit of reading that staff would point to, just to get folks to understand other perspectives in regards to planning and how communities interact with planning. One book that we looked at was People Before Highways, which is more like Boston centric, but like what are some resources that you all, our staff, can look into to think about like how does planning impact different populations of people, and how can you all like improve your community engagement, improve how you connect with diverse groups of folks, and ensure that like we're building communities that are living up to DI or living up to the values that we care about in general. So
That's really helpful. Two of our staff members, Brianne and Guozhang, have started a book club. I think that's been part of sort of the idea they have behind talking about more about planning, but also to incorporate DEI. So
that's awesome. Thank you for doing that.
we'll keep, if you have any other suggestions for books, we'll send it off to them.
Great. I guess we can move on to the open discussion piece here. I do want to share that another piece to think about when it comes to DEI is grants and funding that you all could probably amplify to other organizations that you want to partner with or connect with. I'm going to put one in the chat here, which is transportation. T4MA is looking for how to connect with the community organizations who are working on environmental justice topics, which is very much connected to the topic of DEI. There's a specific definition of what an environmental justice community is based off of like the state. I highly recommend you all look into that definition. You probably already know it, but it specifically thinks about like language access and thinks about racial makeup of communities, and those funds are available for community-based organizations who are doing that work. Yeah, I think like those type of funding, I know that OCPC has created a whole new line of work connected to grantology, which is awesome. And that you all are supporting municipalities with accessing funds. But this is one that is available, and thinking about like what are some of those funds that are available that moves DEI forward too is would be helpful.
So Yolanda, at one point, I think when I first started, I was on the T for Mass board, and I know that they reorganized, but we also applied for some funds. Was it 2 years ago, Charlie? I know we did not get funding, but it did give a highlight as to who again are we interacting. It was the Coalition for Social Justice. I
Oh, okay.
believe the last, but your point is well taken, and we'll take that up. Where's Paul Lamano? There we go. We'll have that as a discussion in terms of other potential grant funding. So thank you.
You're welcome. Any other pieces that y'all want to share during the open discussion piece?
I do, unless somebody else in the staff or something has something to say. So Elise and I, obviously we're always thinking about communications and social media and LinkedIn and all that stuff to connect with everyone that's anywhere. Black History Month is next month. And so, we've highlighted people in the past and organizations, but we also kind of wanted to get everyone's thoughts as well as to what we might be missing, what would be good to highlight, if there's other ideas of how we can celebrate it. I mean, that goes along too with Women's History Month, and moving forward for all the different types of HHI Asian, that one. I'm sorry for not
Asian
remembering.
American and Pacific Islander.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Sorry,
that one as well. So those are all coming up, but I think that this committee would also be helpful to provide additional things that might just not be the basic just post, because I think that that's what everyone can do. But if we really want to celebrate it, what are other things that we can do that are also manageable, obviously, and still focusing on what OCPC brings to our communities, but finding a way to kind of put those together.
I
Yeah,
think it's a good.
yeah. I really love the idea of utilizing those. They're almost like opportunities for us to reflect and to think collectively and to honor the past. So I appreciate you thinking about that, Megan. And I guess one thing that I have seen is organizations like amplifying historical people who maybe that doesn't always get amplified or doesn't are not thought about during the whole year. And those are opportunities for us to like amplify those pieces of history in the past, or even people doing really good work today too, that we somehow like they're not heard as much. So what I would suggest is like looking into maybe like because you all are very much focused on um, building the community, making community better. Who are these community builders in regards to like building great community or making our communities better or making communities better, their communities better in general throughout history. So it could be like for African American history, for women history, or for Asian American and Pacific Islanders. I love that.
Thanks, Yolando.
So we'll continue to communicate by way of the Google Drive with this committee as well as with the other committee members. You'll be reporting out. We'll put together a written report. We'll be reporting out, Yolanda, at the next council meeting. And I would also encourage you to use that time to encourage other council members to participate in these meetings. So ideally, we're not going to be meeting every month, but certainly as we cultivate and as we bring more information, I think the idea of keeping the communication between staff and the council members fresh, but as well as then reporting out to all of our members, particularly in a time where DEI is being evaporated from different corporations and other places. And I think it's all the more reason why we want to make sure that we elevate it as a value to our organization. And not just see it as a value in saying it, but seeing some specific action item. And that's the part which goes back to why we called it ROA, was because the action piece was really important for us to embrace. And I'm the first to say it has fallen a bit off of our plate. I'm not proud of that, but it will continue to stay elevated. And now we as a whole organization, when we meet as a staff, so.
Yeah, thank you, Mary, and I appreciate that institutional bravery that OCPC is having in this moment, because it is DI is something that is slightly under attack right now, and I think it takes institutions and individuals to maybe be a bit more brave in this moment, and hopefully, like we come out of it with good products, good results for community in general, because we just want to make community better for everyone who lives in it. So thank you. And I guess if we don't have anything else to add, I'll see if there's a motion to adjourn.
I will make that motion, Yolanda.
Thank you, Stephen. And I'll second that. And it's a yes for me. Stephen?
Same, yeah, yes.
Great.
Thank you, council members, and thank
Thank
you,
you.
staff members.
Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your day, y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Stay
you
warm,
too.
everyone.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.